Okay, Justin, we're going to jump right in if you're ready.
Excellent. I am ready.
Okay, so I've read the kind of the report and I've seen what you guys have come out with. Can you kind of just walk us through what the research was about, why you did it, and some of the key findings? And I've got a lot of questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So what really precipitated the report, we have a way to track internally how our members are using social selling tactics as they approach the sales and the buying process. We noticed from 2012 until 2015 a dramatic increase in terms of the use of social selling capabilities. And the question we had is this something that is specific to our member base, or does this indicate a broader sea change, if you will, across all of sales? What we decided to do is hire an independent research firm to actually run a survey across all of North America, mid-sized businesses, enterprise businesses, cross-industry, and really get a sense for three things. Number one, what's happening in terms of acceptance of social selling? Number two, are we seeing any differences in behavior from a social selling perspective in terms of the way the best sellers are operating versus the rest? And then number three, we're interested in understanding some demographic data. And really the findings that we're introducing today come out of that independent survey that we launched.
Okay, and can you give us a sense of what the findings were and prizes at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So the survey covered about 1,000 sales professionals, as I mentioned, good cross-section, men versus women, big companies, small companies, and really we found insights in three areas. First of all, from an adoption of social selling, if you were, we were actually surprised to discover that 70% of those people that responded to the survey actually said that they had adopted some form of social selling and incorporated it into their regular operating cadence. In terms of what differentiated the best from the rest, we discovered that number actually climbed to 90%. And so the way we were able to identify top sellers, those who were either exceeding quota, they were in the top 25% among their cohorts, and in addition to that, indicated that they were going to exceed quota this year. So again, that was about 13% of the people that responded, and there was a 90% acceptance rate there. The other really interesting finding that came out of it was the demographic breakdown. We found that, and this isn't a major surprise, but millennials were the highest adopters. So average adoption rate was 71%. Millennials were about 81%. But here's where it got really interesting. When we cross-tab that against our own internal data, we actually found that the more tenured sales professionals were using it more effectively to close business. The takeaway there is that while the millennials are the fuel that are driving this new adoption, the tenured sales pros have been around, know how to use technology to actually get a job done. And really, it's the blended sales organization where you've got the young and the old coming together that we find are the most effective.
Okay, and so what are they using as an excuse to invest in these types of social selling discussions, conversations, prospecting? I mean, how are they getting upper management to buy into this?
So I think there are two factors that are really driving that. Number one, at the ground level, professionals are recognizing that some of the traditional tactics that they have used and been successful with are actually not as successful anymore. They're sensing that the buyer isn't opening up when they start to ask discovery questions. They're also sensing that the cold call response rates that they're getting aren't what they used to be. And as a result of that, they're instinctively looking for new capabilities or tactics. At a senior management level where there's more analytics going on, they're actually tracking the productivity of sales professionals. And what they're discovering is that productivity, if you're following the status quo, is actually falling. And where they're seeing higher usage of social platforms, they're actually seeing a bump in terms of new business, closed revenue, and shortened sales cycles.
Okay, and when you look at their actual activities throughout the day, I mean, how much of it is on Twitter or LinkedIn or some other social channels? Did you track that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So among those people that are using social platforms, 75% are on LinkedIn, 71% are on Facebook, about 42% are on Twitter. those are the big three right now.
Okay, and then how? I mean, are they utilizing different strategies for each channel? And if so, can you kind of, in brief, kind of talk us or walk us through that? Because Facebook, I don't know what people are doing on social selling on Facebook. I'd be very curious about that. I have a general understanding of Twitter, and I have a really good understanding of LinkedIn. But if you could walk us through those three channels real quick.
Yeah, there's definitely, I think, a portfolio strategy at work where they're getting different things from different people. You're absolutely right that Facebook is more of a consumer-oriented technology. Our sense is, as we talk to the sales pros out there, that they're using Facebook to find areas of common interest, icebreakers to kind of open things up. Potentially, if you do have more social relationships or links to other people on a social level, Facebook is beneficial there. And then in some cases, because so many companies now do have company pages on Facebook, that becomes another indicator. But beyond really kind of the icebreakers, the substance around what the buyer cares about from a professional standpoint, that information is hard to get on Facebook. Twitter tends to be a blend of professional and the consumer space. So again, there's some icebreaker opportunity. There's also this real-time visibility into what's going on in the mind of the individual. And then clearly LinkedIn is where you'd have an aggregation of all the professional interests.
And let's dive a little bit deeper into LinkedIn. When you looked at how people are prospecting on LinkedIn, I know there's InMail, I know there's the blogging capabilities, but is there a specific process that the best of the best go through in order to bring in the right customers without annoying them?
Absolutely. So it was interesting. The behavior kind of consolidated around three general categories: the way that the best were targeting, the time they were spending to understand, and then the tactics they were actually using to engage. So from a targeting perspective, some interesting things going on there. Most, when they come to LinkedIn, have a pretty good sense for the demographic that they're trying to go after. What industry am I focused on? What company specifically? And you're seeing that there's very broad adoption of focus on demographic signals. A little under half, though, are actually blending that with intent signals. An example of an intent signal: I just changed jobs. It's highly likely that I'm going to be looking to shake things up, and therefore it's a great time as a sales pro to reach out. So the best of the best are able to use the intent signals in conjunction with the demographic signals in order to reach out at the right time. Another great example of an intent signal: suddenly you see a high degree of hiring going on. I'm selling call center technology, and suddenly I see all sorts of recs out there for call center agents. So that's kind of in the targeting realm. From an understanding perspective, we actually are able to look at the amount of time that people are spending researching companies, how much time they're spending on different profiles, how engaged they are in different feed sessions, the comments they're sharing. Interesting finding there is that the best of the best are actually spending 25% more time. I know there's always an eagerness to get out there and immediately make a connection, but those people that are willing to go slow in order to go fast seem to be really earning the big dollars. And then lastly, from an engagement perspective, you're right, InMail is a great way to reach out. Again, some interesting differences from a response perspective. Those people that have done the research can personalize the email, and we're seeing higher response rates. We can actually track the kind of response rates that you're getting. And then the other interesting thing is those people that are more active on posting long-form content on LinkedIn tend to get more traction as well, because they're establishing themselves as a thought leader before they actually reach out.
Okay, and you're finding that a lot of these salespeople know how to create good long-form content, or are they going to the marketing department to have that created?
Yeah, so it's a mixed bag. I would say that in general, sales professionals are uncomfortable actually drafting the document. What sales professionals do exceptionally well, though, is they have relationships with key thought leaders, either among the customers or prospects that they're targeting, or just through industry connections. And number two, sales professionals are born and bred to ask great questions. When you bring those two together, great people with great questions, you have the makings of amazing content. So where sales pros feel comfortable, they're getting on the call, turning that into a post. What we're seeing more and more companies do, though, is they're actually setting up kind of a marketing tiger team. And the sales pro will get on a call, say, hey, I'm writing an article on this, would love to record you. They kick it out to marketing, maybe marketing outsources it, and a day later, they get a long form post, which basically packages up the conversation.
It seems to me like salespeople would be better served by doing videos, right? Just shooting a 2-minute video on a few of the objections that they've heard and their responses to it, and then posting that on LinkedIn, maybe in kind of a long form content. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, video is definitely trending. We're seeing a dramatic uptick there. I think a small video, I would even recommend for video less than a minute. So if you're a field pro and you're out there and you're talking to people, even better if you can get with one of your customers and get them on film. One of the challenges is that a lot of people today are interacting via phone. That's a less expensive channel. So in that case, the written word, obviously, people are biased to that versus video. But we know through statistics that if you can get video, that's going to get more pickup.
Okay, even on your platform, video seems to resonate better than the written word.
I think because of the nature of information that's shared on LinkedIn, it's actually a pretty good balance. I would say that people have voted with their hands across all platforms that they like video better, but we've got some very rich content, and I think there's an established tradition of sharing it in that format. So we want to play both sides.
Okay, is LinkedIn doing anything to encourage this video type of creation yet? Facebook has claimed that if you post video, you'll get a lot more views. Has LinkedIn considered that or focused on that at all yet?
To the extent that we're encouraging people, we're certainly investing in our video platform, making it easier for people to post video, and making that searchable and people aware of it. In terms of explicitly promoting that through campaigns, we haven't necessarily gone that far yet.
Okay. Let's talk about InMail, because I use it. I reach out to people, but there's a lot of people that abuse it, I'd say.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you're thinking of that could help guys like me reach the people we want to reach without being annoying? I know part of that's on me, but also I get inundated, really do, with especially people that want to sell me website services and other things that I really don't need. I know this is a complex issue, but is there anything around the prospecting side that gets people, like salespeople, what they want, but also doesn't, let's say, cause people like me that are getting inundated not to want to log in because we got so many requests coming at us?
Yeah. I really view InMail as the goose that lays the golden egg, which is the response rates. We actually look at response rates, and depending on your industry, for example, high tech, you get a response rate via email of about 1%. Yeah. InMail is about 11% right now. And I think people acknowledge the fact that because you have such incredible response rates, it's a great prospecting tool. But to your point, to the extent that more and more people use that more and more frequently in an abusive way and in a spam-like way, you're going to see those response rates drop. So we're very cognizant of that. We do not want this to become a spam channel. In fact, when we talk about the value of LinkedIn, while InMail is one of the facets of it, it is not the be-all, end-all, if you will. So a couple things that we're doing to try to address that problem. Number one, we found that if you can deliver relevant and personalized InMail, you get a much higher acceptance rate. The recipient appreciates that, and in many cases is willing to engage. And in fact, if you think about it, the InMail is right next to all of the key details that you need to understand in order to personalize it. Unlike email, where you've got to go out and you've got to search various platforms, aggregate the content, and then put it in there. So by nature of the fact that the two coexist, you've already got a leg up. The second thing that we're thinking about is how can we actually make smarter recommendations about things that you might want to share with that person as you reach out to them, so that the process of personalizing the InMail gets even better. But you're absolutely right. It's top of mind. It's something that we're thinking about, and we recognize this as an ecosystem. We have to make it easier for the sender, but it also has to be a great experience for the recipient. And unless we can balance those two, we're going to lose it.
And I know it's a very difficult balance, and a lot of it is, frankly, on the salesperson, to approach it the right way. But every prospect's different. Some like to be approached, some don't. It's a timing thing. I know it's a complex issue. But that's a great segue into, I'm seeing Facebook and Skype come out with bots now. It seems to me a perfect thing for you guys to do, and I know it's complex, is to have some kind of automated system where if I want to learn more about an organization, I could just communicate with the bot and it gives me the information that I want, or it answers questions. Have you guys thought about doing anything like that in the future?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that bots is definitely the term du jour, and I think that there is value in having some kind of artificial intelligence behind the scenes, understanding who you are, what you care about, and allowing you to do the things that you need to get done more easily. Today we call that a bot. It could be called predictive analytics blended with workflow. But at the end of the day, there's value there, particularly for a sales professional. We've heard that the amount of time spent behind the scenes doing administrivia is disproportionate to the amount of face time that you get with customers. So again, we're trying to think through that. I'm not going to announce a bot strategy today. That said, I will say that we think on a daily basis, how do we get a better understanding of what sales professionals care about? There's such great information, not only on LinkedIn, but across the web. How do we aggregate and consolidate that and then serve it up at the right time in conjunction with thoughts about the next best action? And so I think over the the coming year, the coming years, you're going to see us get even better and better at doing that.
Okay. Now, when you look at how salespeople are actually using social selling, and it could be specific to LinkedIn or Twitter or what have you, do you have a sense of how small companies are doing it versus big companies? Is there any difference? Anything you could share from the research that was done?
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to the research that we did on the best versus the rest, we found that in addition to embracing social selling individually, 90%, they also worked for companies that had institutionalized the process of social selling. I think the statistic was in the mid 80% versus 64% of companies, of the rest of the companies. What that tells us is that there really needs to be a partnership between the individual and the company. And I'll give you a couple examples of great partnerships that we've seen. Microsoft, for example, built a PMO. Within that PMO, they had an explicit strategy. They focused on 4 key areas that would help their sellers. Number one, they helped them to build great profiles. One of the ironic, I think, facts of the day is that in many cases, you have literally hundreds of thousands of impressions that you're creating as people come to LinkedIn and search for your employees. And to the extent that you're not exploiting that as another marketing channel, another opportunity to land your message, you're really missing an opportunity. Microsoft got that. You think of the worldwide employee base that they've got, and they said, first and foremost, we want to help our individual sellers create a personal brand, but we also want it to be reflective of what we stand for here at Microsoft. Second thing that they do is they provide content that helps the social sellers engage in an intelligent way. It's a library. Number 3 is they provide specific readouts around the demographics that the sellers should be focused on. And then lastly, they track and they measure the efficacy. And there's actually a standard that we use called the Social Selling Index, which is an individual score, and you can look at how that trends over time. So it's a great example of supporting the two. One other quick example is DocuSign. As soon as the people from DocuSign come on board, the sales professionals, there's literally a sales training program around how to use LinkedIn. And they profile based on your expertise as a social seller before they'll hire anyone. So I think more and more you're going to start to see this become mainstream within the institution of selling as opposed to something that individuals are expected to adopt.
Okay. And, kind of the final question, and this is just theoretical in your opinion, how do you think in 5 years, with social selling becoming more and more prominent in organizations, large and small, and then the marketing role, do you see them converging? Do you still see them as separate? How do you, in 5 years, look at what this whole makeup between sales and marketing becomes?
Yeah, it's interesting. If you look at over the past, I'd say 5 years, there's been a massive increase in terms of the integration of marketing and sales automation systems. A lot of money spent. A lot of individual focus from vendors that are thinking about how to play well together, even outside of their company. The other interesting trend I've seen is the ability around marketing attribution, mining big data, complex algorithms that can actually attach a marketing effort to revenue. Despite that fact, you still have, in most cases, an incredibly disjointed effort on the front line between the campaigns that actually hit a buyer and the outreach from sales as they engage with the buyer. And so the $1 million question is, we've invested this money, we've tried to integrate. Why is it that there is still such a disjointed experience? I would argue that one of the problems is that despite the platforms are talking to each other, essentially sales and marketing to some extent is still fishing in different pools. As a marketer, I buy a list. I go out and I blast that list. As a sales professional, I have a very targeted focus on a set of accounts. What I love about LinkedIn is the fact that it is a pool that both sales and marketing can play in. I would venture to expand that and say that more and more you're going to see these integrated pools of information about the target buyer, where sales and marketing can come together and have a common understanding of what that buyer looks like. It won't just be limited to LinkedIn, but it'll be more available. So that's number one. Number two, today people are leaving these amazing invisible wakes of information behind them. Anything that we touch online generates a wake. Any place that we go, any questions that we ask. We've already seen how it's massively disrupted consumer technology. When I sit down and watch Netflix, I don't tell Netflix what I want to watch, but Netflix knows me. It knows me so well that it can recommend a program, and suddenly I've watched 5 episodes, and I didn't even know about the show when I sat down. That's an example of the power of a digital wake. To some extent today, we're asking sales professionals in particular still to manually enter all of the information about what they're doing and about their buyers. I think that completely goes away, and it's replaced by just these massive ingestion engines, algorithms on the back end that are helping us to make sense of it. We're able to generate higher revenue productivity based on spending more time with customers talking about what they care about. Okay,
so still 2 separate roles, but maybe working together better because the information is shared. You've got this back-end analytics and information that's, looking at the activities of these prospects and, sharing that with sales and marketing so they have the same picture of what's going on.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, now to wrap things up, is there anything I didn't ask that I should have asked about the research, about social selling, about the future of social selling?
I touched on this earlier, but one of the things that I'm the most excited about is at the end of the day, social selling is about making connections with people in an authentic but more scalable way. And what I'm particularly encouraged by is it feels like this is a tent that's big enough to bring in or enfranchise lots of different kinds of folks. I talked before about how the Millennials are driving the adoption of a new technology, but the tenured sales professionals are actually directing that energy. One other interesting finding that came out of our study, it was a pretty good balance of men and women. We found that women were actually more inclined to embrace social selling as key to their success by a factor of about 20% more than men. Men, on the other hand, were more inclined to gravitate towards CRM. I don't want to get too much into that because I don't want to get myself into trouble. But to me, what it indicates is that these traditional stereotypes that we've had about who are sales professionals, what do they stand for, are really being broken down. And in their place, there's an opportunity for the young and the old, men and women, people from all different size companies to really come together to exchange the best that they have to offer and ultimately to create a better experience for the buyer.
Okay, excellent. Well said. Yeah, and the stereotypes, they kind of shift back and forth depending on what technologies that they're utilizing. So I don't read too much into that, especially if it's only 20%. But I've seen both genders use it very, very effectively in their own way, and they all have their own tactics and what works, what doesn't. So it's very interesting to watch. All
Absolutely.
right, well, Justin, it was a pleasure. Glad we got to talk about this issue. This is one of the things I love talking about. Try to be as much as possible on the forefront of these things. And I know people that are watching this and reading the accompanying article will be fascinated by what we talked about today and what some of the insights that you had. And we'll have a link to your report so they can dive in a little deeper if they want. But again, just sorry about the technical difficulties in the beginning, but I think we got a great conversation to share with everybody.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure. Thank you.